Montana Territory, winter of 1874. The wind howled through the pines like a wounded beast, its cold breath turning every exhale to ghost white vapor. Snowflakes fell like ash from a world burned white, covering tracks, burying secrets, killing the careless. Through this veil of white, a lone figure moved with purpose, following a set of tracks only his trained eyes could see. Jack Blackwood crouched low, running his gloved hand over the faint impression in the snow, a massive wolf's paw print, nearly filled by fresh powder. The gray alpha had been raiding his traps for weeks. Today would end the game between them. The Winchester 73 across his back had never failed him, not in the war between the states, not in the decades since. The former Union Army surgeon turned mountain hunter adjusted his fur-lined collar against the biting cold. His face, weathered by sun and wind, remained impassive despite the dropping temperature. 42 years had carved deep lines around his eyes, the kind earned from squinting down rifle barrels and stitching torn flesh under battlefield lanterns. "Come on, you old devil," he muttered, his voice swallowed by the howling wind. The track suddenly veered left. Strange. The wolf had been heading toward the stream but changed course abruptly. Jack's instincts, honed through years of tracking both animals and men, prickled with warning. Something had spooked the predator. Then he saw it. A splash of crimson against pristine white. Blood. Fresh, not animal. Human? Jack's hand moved automatically to his rifle, unslinging it with practiced ease. Following the blood trail, he moved with the silence of a mountain lion, each step deliberate despite the knee-deep snow. The drops of blood grew larger, more frequent. Whoever was bleeding was losing strength. Over the ridge, he spotted movement. A small figure struggling through the snow, stumbling with each step. A woman, clutching something wrapped in blankets against her chest. Her dress, once blue, hung in tatters around her thin frame. She fell to her knees, then struggled back up, pushing forward with grim determination. Jack watched for a moment, assessing. In these mountains, trust came as rarely as spring, but something in her desperate movements compelled him forward. He was 20 yards away when she collapsed completely, the bundle in her arms rolling slightly to the side. Her face pressed into the snow, red hair spilling around her like blood. She didn't move. Jack approached cautiously, rifle ready. The bundle stirred slightly. A child. He knelt beside the woman, turning her over gently. Her face was young but haggard, her lips blue with cold. Her eyelids fluttered at his touch. "Can you hear me?" His voice was rough from disuse. Her eyes opened, unfocused, delirious. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "When the snow melts, bury her properly." The bundle. The child. Jack set his rifle down and carefully unwrapped the blankets. A little girl, no more than 2 years old, her skin pale as moonlight, lips tinged blue. For a terrible moment, he thought she was already gone. Then he saw it. The faintest rise and fall of her tiny chest, the smallest cloud of breath. "She's alive," he said, more to himself than the mother who had slipped back into unconsciousness. Without hesitation, Jack lifted both mother and child into his arms. The storm was worsening, visibility dropping by the minute. The wolf would have to wait. He turned toward home, a lone cabin nestled against the mountainside, a mile's hard walk through deepening snow. "Stay with me, little one," he murmured to the child. "Both of you, just stay alive." The cabin stood defiant against the mountainside, built of logs thick enough to withstand the worst Montana blizzards. Inside, a fire roared in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls adorned with pelts, antlers, and weapons. Jack moved with urgency, placing the child closest to the fire's warmth while laying the mother on his cot. His hands, which could field dress a deer in minutes or hit a moving target at 400 yards, now worked with delicate precision. He removed the child's wet clothes and wrapped her in warm furs, then examined her with a doctor's practiced eye. Fever, shallow breathing, fluid in the lungs, pneumonia advanced. Without treatment, she had hours, not days. "Not on my watch," Jack growled. From a wooden chest, he retrieved supplies saved from his army days. Surgical instruments kept meticulously clean, bandages, and medicines. But it was the leather pouch beside them that he reached for first, filled with herbs and remedies learned from his Apache wife, Maria. The memory flashed unbidden, Maria grinding juniper berries in the stone mortar, humming softly, their son playing at her feet, before the fire, before the smoke and screams, before he returned from hunting to find his life reduced to ashes. Jack pushed the memory away. The past was the past. These two needed him now. The child convulsed suddenly, her breathing stopping altogether. Jack didn't hesitate. With practiced movements, he cleared her airway, then made a small incision between her ribs, inserting a hollow reed to drain the fluid from her lungs. A battlefield technique that had saved countless soldiers, now employed to save a child no bigger than his forearm. Amber fluid drained through the tube. The girl coughed weakly, then drew a rattling breath. Jack mixed a tincture of willow bark, pine needles, and herbs whose names Maria had taught him in her native tongue. He administered a few drops between the child's pale lips. "Fight, little warrior," he whispered. "Your battle's not over." The mother stirred on the cot. Her eyes opened, wild with fever and fear. "My baby," she gasped, trying to rise. "Stay down," Jack ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Your daughter's alive, but barely. I've drained fluid from her lungs. She needs rest, medicine, and prayer, in that order." The woman stared at him, fear gradually giving way to desperate hope. "Who are you?" "Jack Blackwood. This is my mountain." He handed her a cup of water. "Drink. Then tell me why a woman and child were wandering my mountain in a killing blizzard." She drank deeply, her hands shaking. "Catherine Morgan," she said finally. "My daughter is Lucy." Her eyes darted to the child. "Will she survive?" Jack's face remained impassive. "I've seen soldiers with worse pull-through, but she's small, weak. The night will tell." He stoked the fire higher, then asked, "Where'd you come from?" "Silver Creek." Catherine's voice hardened. "They wouldn't help us. Said they wouldn't waste medicine on a woman who—" Her voice faltered. "Who what?" Jack pressed. "Who loved an Indian?" The words came out as a challenge, her chin lifting slightly. Jack's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Silver Creek," he repeated. "Edward Holloway still running things there?" Catherine's face registered surprise. "Yes. How did you—" "Son of the preacher. Mean piece of work. Fancies himself judge and executioner." Jack checked his rifle, a habit so ingrained he did it unconsciously. "He the one who turned you away?" Catherine nodded slowly. "He said he'd hang me for defiling white blood. Said my daughter was." She couldn't finish. Jack moved to the window, pushing back the heavy shutter an inch to peer into the swirling snow. His instincts, honed by years of survival, sensed danger beyond the howling wind. "We're not alone on this mountain," he said quietly. "Someone followed your tracks." He closed the shutter, securing the heavy wooden bar across it. "And I don't think they came to help." He moved methodically around the cabin, checking each window, each potential entry point. From a locked chest, he withdrew 2 Colt revolvers, checking each chamber before tucking one into his belt and placing the other on the table within Catherine's reach. "Can you shoot?" he asked bluntly. "My father taught me, before he disowned me." Jack nodded once. "Good, because when morning comes, we might need every bullet." Outside, the wind screamed against the cabin walls. Inside, the child's breathing came easier, her fever-flushed face peaceful in sleep. Jack settled into a chair by the door, rifle across his lap, eyes alert. Catherine watched him warily from beside her daughter. "Why help us?" she finally asked. "Most would have left us to die." Jack's gaze remained fixed on the door. "I was a doctor once, in another life." "And now?" His eyes, hard as flint, met hers. "Now I'm the man who's going to keep you and your daughter alive. Get some rest, Mrs. Morgan. Tomorrow comes sooner than you think." As Catherine drifted into exhausted sleep, Jack's mind turned to Edward Holloway. The name awakened old memories, old hatred. The preacher's son who'd led the mob that burned homesteads of settlers who'd married natives. The same man whose father had preached fire and brimstone while ordering the massacre of impure unions. The same men who'd murdered Jack's family while he was hunting. He checked his Winchester again, feeling the familiar weight in his hands. He'd hunted down 3 of the men responsible over the years. But the Holloways had remained elusive, protected by their position and money. Perhaps fate had finally delivered them to his doorstep. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering tracks, burying secrets. But some secrets refused to stay buried. Some debts demanded payment in blood. 1 week passed. The blizzard had subsided, leaving the world encased in pristine white. Inside the cabin, Lucy's condition improved slowly. Her fever broke, but her lungs remained weak, her small body fighting battles beyond her years. Jack stood in the clearing behind the cabin, Catherine beside him. He adjusted her grip on the Colt revolver. "Tighter," he instructed. "Anticipate the recoil." Catherine aimed at the tin can perched on a stump 30 yards away. The shot cracked through the mountain silence, missing by inches. "Better," Jack acknowledged. Again. As she reloaded, he surveyed the tree line. No sign of intruders since the night of the storm, but Jack trusted his instincts. They were being watched. Waiting meant preparation, and preparation meant survival. "Why are you doing this?" Catherine asked, raising the pistol again. "Because the next time someone tries to kill you and your daughter, you'll be ready." Her shot hit the can this time, sending it flying. "Good," Jack nodded. "Now we hunt." He led her through snow-laden woods, teaching her to move silently, to read tracks, to set snares. When they spotted a buck at the forest edge, Jack demonstrated the patience of a predator, waiting motionless for the perfect shot. The Winchester's report echoed through the valley, and the buck fell instantly, a clean kill. "One shot," he explained as they approached the fallen animal. "Anything more is wasteful and dangerous. Out here, the sound of a gunshot carries. Every bullet fired tells someone exactly where you are." As Jack dressed the deer with practiced efficiency, Catherine studied him. The scars on his hands, the precision of his movements, the constant awareness of his surroundings. "You were more than just a doctor in the war," she observed. Jack's knife never paused. "I was whatever they needed me to be. Sometimes that meant saving lives. Sometimes it meant taking them." Back at the cabin, Lucy sat up for the first time, her dark eyes watching Jack as he prepared a stew from the fresh venison. Though still weak, the child showed remarkable resilience. "She needs medicine I don't have," Jack said that evening. "Proper antibiotics. The infection's retreating, but it could return stronger." "Where can we get it?" Catherine asked. "Silver Creek. The apothecary there stocks what we need." Catherine's face paled. "You can't go there, if Edward." "Edward Holloway is exactly why I'm going," Jack interrupted. Time we became reacquainted. The next morning, Jack rode out on Ghost, his pale Mustang. The journey to Silver Creek took 3 hours through snow-covered trails. The small mining town looked like any other frontier settlement. Muddy streets, wooden buildings, the church steeple rising above all else like a self-righteous finger pointing to heaven. Jack kept his hat low, his scarred face partially hidden by his beard. The apothecary filled his order without question, more interested in Jack's money than his identity. But as Jack mounted Ghost to leave, a voice called out from the saloon. "Well, I'll be damned. Jack Blackwood, back from the dead." Jack turned slowly. A man with a sheriff's badge stood in the saloon doorway, hand hovering near his pistol. "Sheriff Wilson," Jack acknowledged. "Still wearing that badge like you earned it. You're wanted in 3 counties, Blackwood, for murder. Self-defense isn't murder, and those men deserved what they got." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You can't take the law into your own hands. When the law protects murderers, someone has to." Jack's hand remained steady, nowhere near his weapon, but the threat in his posture was unmistakable. "I just came for medicine. I'll be on my way now." "Hold it right there." The sheriff drew his pistol, but Jack was already moving. Ghost reared, providing cover as Jack spurred the horse forward. Gunshots rang out, one grazing Jack's arm as he galloped down the main street. More shots followed, but Jack rode hard, disappearing into the tree line before they could organize a pursuit. 2 miles out of town, Jack slowed, listening. Hoofbeats. 3 riders, coming fast. He turned Ghost off the trail, leading his pursuers into narrower, more treacherous terrain. These were hired guns, not trackers. Jack knew these mountains like he knew the scars on his own hands. At a narrow ravine, he dismounted, sending Ghost ahead with a slap on the flank. Then he positioned himself behind a boulder, Winchester ready. The 3 riders appeared minutes later, following Ghost's tracks. Jack waited until they were in the killing zone. The first shot took the lead rider through the chest. Before the others could react, Jack chambered another round and fired again. The second man fell, clutching his throat. The third wheeled his horse around, firing blindly into the trees. Jack's third shot caught him in the shoulder, unseating him. The wounded man scrambled for cover, firing his revolver toward Jack's position. One bullet splintered bark inches from Jack's head. He moved silently through the trees, circling behind the panicked gunman. "Who sent you?" Jack pressed his knife against the man's throat. "Go to hell," the man spat. Jack applied slight pressure, drawing blood. "Edward Holloway? Answer me, and you might live." "Holloway's offering $500 for the woman and the half-breed child," the man gasped. "1,000 for your head." Jack considered this information. "Ride back to Holloway. Tell him Jack Blackwood sends his regards. Tell him I'm coming for what he owes me." The man nodded frantically. Jack knocked him unconscious with the butt of his knife, then mounted the man's horse, leading it and the other horses back to where Ghost waited patiently. By sunset, Jack reached the cabin, blood-stained and grim. Catherine took one look at his wound and the 3 extra horses and understood. "They followed you," she said, helping him inside. "Edward Holloway sends his compliments?" Jack winced as she cleaned the bullet graze. "And $1,000 bounty on my head?" "Why 1,000 for you and only 500 for us?" she asked, wrapping a bandage around his arm. Jack's laugh was without humor. "Old debts. I killed 3 of the men who burned my home and murdered my wife and son years ago. Maria was Apache. Our boy was 4. He met Catherine's gaze directly. Edward and his father led the mob that day." Catherine's hands stilled. "Your wife was Indian too?" "Yes, and they killed her for it." Jack looked over at Lucy, sleeping peacefully by the fire. "Just like they'd kill your daughter for her father's blood." A knock at the door silenced them both. Jack's Winchester was in his hands instantly, motioning Catherine behind him. The knock came again, followed by a voice. "Blackwood, it's Thunderbear. We need to talk." Jack relaxed slightly, though his rifle remained ready. He opened the door to reveal a tall Native American man dressed in a mixture of traditional Cheyenne clothing and frontiersman gear. "Bad times coming," Thunderbear said without preamble, stepping inside. "Holloway gathers many guns." Jack nodded to Catherine. "Thunderbear, my neighbor, 10 miles west, best tracker in the territory." Thunderbear studied Catherine and the sleeping child, the woman they hunt. He turned back to Jack. 20 men, coming at the next full moon." "Why so many for one woman and child?" Catherine asked. Thunderbear's expression was grim. "Not just for you. Holloway found gold in the Eastern Valley, wants all Native people gone before others discover it. Using you as excuse to start war." Jack and Thunderbear spent the night planning defenses, setting traps around the cabin perimeter. Catherine watched them work together, communicating with the efficiency of men who shared respect, if not friendship. "How do you know him?" she asked Jack when Thunderbear stepped outside. "Saved his life 3 winters ago. Avalanche broke his leg. I said it." Jack continued checking his ammunition. "He returned the favor when hunters came for me last year." Thunderbear returned at dawn. "They come tonight. Holloway leads them." Jack nodded grimly. "We'll be ready." Twilight fell across the mountain like a shroud. Jack positioned Catherine at the cabin's rear window, rifle loaded. Lucy slept in the root cellar beneath the floorboards, hidden and protected. "When the shooting starts, stay down," Jack instructed. "Fire only if they reach the cabin. Make every shot count." Outside, Jack and Thunderbear took positions in the trees. The first trap, a tripwire connected to shotgun shells, was 50 yards out. Beyond that, pitfalls covered with snow awaited unwary horses. They came with the rising moon, 20 men on horseback, Edward Holloway at their head. Tall, well-dressed despite the wilderness, with cold eyes and his father's religious fervor twisted into something darker. "Blackwood," Holloway's voice carried across the clearing. "We know you're harboring the Morgan woman and her abomination. Surrender them now." Jack's response was a single shot that knocked the hat from Holloway's head. The men scattered for cover, returning fire. The night erupted in gunfire and chaos. 3 riders triggered the first trap, the shotgun blast unhorsing them in an explosion of snow and blood. Another fell into a concealed pit, his screams echoing through the trees. Thunderbear's arrows found 2 more, silent death from the darkness. But Holloway had brought numbers, and they pressed forward despite the losses. Bullets splintered the cabin walls. A fire arrow struck the roof, flames spreading quickly across the dry wood. Inside, Catherine fired steadily, dropping a man who tried to rush the door. The smoke grew thicker as the roof burned. She had to get Lucy out. Outside, Jack saw the flames and broke cover, racing toward the cabin. A bullet caught him in the side, spinning him into the snow. Thunderbear provided covering fire as Jack struggled back to his feet, pressing a hand against the bleeding wound. "Catherine!" Jack shouted as he reached the cabin door. "Get Lucy and head for the cave." Catherine emerged from the smoke, Lucy clutched to her chest. Jack led them toward the rear of the property, where a narrow path disappeared into the rocks, the escape route he had shown her days earlier. Thunderbear appeared beside them, an arrow protruding from his shoulder. "Go," he urged. "I will hold them." "No," Jack grabbed his arm. "Come with us." Thunderbear shook his head. "My path ends here, brother. Yours continues." He pressed something into Jack's hand, a small medicine pouch. "For your wound. Now go." Jack hesitated only a moment before nodding. He led Catherine and Lucy up the hidden path as Thunderbear turned to face the approaching riders. The last they saw of him, he stood tall against the flames, bow drawn, a final defiant sentinel. The sound of gunfire followed them into the night. The cave extended deep into the mountain, connecting to a small hidden valley on the other side, a place Thunderbear had once called home. A stream provided fresh water, and stored supplies ensured they wouldn't starve. Jack collapsed once they were safe, blood soaking his shirt. The bullet had passed through his side, missing vital organs, but leaving him feverish and weak. For 3 days, he drifted between consciousness and delirium, while Catherine tended his wound, using the medicines from Thunderbear's pouch. In his fever dreams, Jack relived the day he returned to find his cabin burning, Maria and their son already beyond saving. He saw the faces of the men responsible, 3 he had tracked down and killed over the years, and the 2 who had ordered it all, Preacher Holloway and his son Edward. "I know who you are," Catherine said when his fever finally broke on the 4th day. "Jack Blackwood, the army surgeon who became a bounty hunter after his family was murdered." Jack sat up slowly, wincing. "Not a bounty hunter. Just a man settling debts." "You've been hunting the Holloways for years." "It wasn't a question." Jack nodded. "Edward and his father led the mob that killed my family because Maria was Apache. They've been protected by their money and position. Until now, Catherine helped him stand, supporting his weight. My daughter's father was Comanche, Daniel Redhorse. He saved me when I was lost in the forest. We fell in love." Her voice hardened. "The Holloways had him beaten to death when he came to ask for my hand." Jack tested his wounded side, grimacing. "Then we share the same enemy." Over the next week, as Jack regained his strength, he taught Catherine everything he knew about survival and combat. She proved an apt pupil, her determination fueled by years of suffering and loss. Lucy recovered completely, showing a child's resilience and curiosity about their new surroundings. "What's your plan?" Catherine asked one evening as they sat by the cave entrance, watching the sunset paint the valley gold. "Silver Creek," Jack said simply. Edward Holloway thinks we died in that fire. We used that advantage. To do what? Kill him? Jack's eyes were cold. To ensure he never hurts another family. You and Lucy deserve justice. So did Maria and our son. So did Daniel. The plan took shape over days of preparation. Jack had an old Army comrade in Silver Creek, Samuel Cooper, who ran the livery stable. A message delivered by a trusted Shoshone trader brought Cooper to their hidden valley. "You look like hell, Captain," Cooper grinned, clasping Jack's hand. "Feel worse," Jack replied. "Need your help, Sam." Cooper listened to their story, his expression darkening. "The Holloways have this town in their pocket, Jack. The sheriff, the judge, all bought and paid for." "We don't need the law," Jack said. "We need the truth to come out. About all of it, the gold, the killings, everything." Cooper nodded slowly. "There's a federal marshal coming through next week. Man named Isaiah Parker. Fought with us at Antietam. Honest to a fault." "Perfect," Jack said. "We'll be ready." The night before they were to leave for Silver Creek, Jack found Catherine standing by the stream, staring at her reflection in the moonlight. "Are you afraid?" she asked without turning. "Only a fool wouldn't be," Jack answered honestly. She turned to face him. "I never thanked you properly. For saving Lucy. For helping us." "No thanks needed." "Why did you really help us that day? You could have left us to die." Jack was silent for a long moment. "Because when I found you in that snow, I saw Maria. I saw my son. I couldn't save them, but I could save you." Catherine stepped closer, her hand touching his scarred cheek. "You did save us. Now let us help save you." For the first time in years, Jack Blackwood felt something stir within him that he had thought long dead. Not just purpose or vengeance, but something deeper. Something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. "Get some rest," he said softly. "Tomorrow we ride for Silver Creek." They entered the town separately, Jack as a bounty hunter bringing in a prisoner, Catherine disguised as a miner's widow. Lucy remained safely hidden with Cooper's wife outside town. The saloon fell silent when Jack pushed through the doors. A hardened killer's demeanor wrapped around him like armor. He approached the bar, ordering whiskey in a voice pitched to carry. "Heard there's good hunting in these parts," he drawled. "Man named Holloway paying top dollar for certain trophies." The bartender eyed him warily. "Might be. What's your business with it?" Jack tossed a blood-stained saddlebag onto the counter. "Got something he might want to see." Word spread quickly. Within an hour, Jack was summoned to the church where Edward Holloway and his father conducted their business. Catherine, positioned in the boarding house across the street, watched through a window, rifle ready. The church interior was cold despite the season, its walls adorned with fire and brimstone, scenes of judgment and damnation. Edward Holloway stood near the altar, his father seated in a high-backed chair like a throne. "You claim to have killed Jack Blackwood," Edward said skeptically. Jack, his face partially concealed by his hat, nodded. "Got the proof right here." He opened the saddlebag, revealing a blood-stained coat, his own, from the night of the firefight. Preacher Holloway leaned forward. "And the woman? The half-breed child?" "Burned in the cabin," Jack said flatly. "No survivors." Edward smiled, a cold, satisfied expression. "Show me your face, bounty hunter. I like to know who I'm paying." Jack looked up slowly, removing his hat. "Hello, Edward. It's been a while." The recognition, the shock, the fear that flashed across Edward's face was worth the years of waiting. Blackwood, guards. "Your guards are occupied," Jack said calmly. "Federal Marshal Parker is currently arresting them for the murder of Thunderbear and attempted murder of a woman and child." Preacher Holloway rose, trembling with rage. "You dare come into my church after what you and your kind have done?" "My kind?" Jack stepped forward. "You mean doctors who save lives? Husbands who love their wives? Fathers who protect their children?" His voice hardened. "Or do you mean men who don't use God as an excuse for murder and theft?" "Blasphemer!" the old man shouted. "Edward, kill him!" Edward drew his pistol, but Jack was faster. A bullet to the hand sent Edward's weapon clattering across the wooden floor. Jack advanced, his own gun steady. 7 years I've waited for this moment, Jack said quietly. 7 years of hunting the men who murdered my family. 3 found justice at the end of my gun, and now, you too. Preacher Holloway pulled a derringer from his Bible. The Lord protects his servants. The shot went wide as the church doors burst open. Catherine stood framed in the doorway, rifle raised. Not this time, preacher. The devil's whore, the old man snarled, turning his small pistol toward her. Jack lunged forward, but Catherine fired first. Her bullet struck the preacher's arm, spinning him into the altar. Edward scrambled for his falling gun with his uninjured hand, only to find Jack's boot pinning it to the floor. "It's over, Edward," Jack said. "The marshal knows everything. The murders, the gold claim, all of it." "You can't prove anything," Edward spat. "I can." Marshal Parker entered behind Catherine, his badge gleaming in the dim church light. "Got 3 of your men singing like canaries about the Indian massacres. About how you've been killing settlers who married natives to claim their land." Preacher Holloway, clutching his wounded arm, glared with hatred. "We were cleansing this territory of impurity, doing God's work." "Save it for the judge," Parker said, producing handcuffs. "You're both under arrest for murder, conspiracy, and about a dozen other charges that'll see you hang." Jack holstered his weapon, a strange emptiness replacing the vengeful fire that had driven him for so long. The Holloways would face justice, not his justice, but the law's. Part of him felt cheated of his revenge, yet something else, something that sounded like Maria's voice, whispered that this was better. As Parker led the Holloways away, Catherine approached Jack. "Is it really over?" Jack watched his enemies being taken to jail, the weight of 7 years of hatred lifting slowly from his shoulders. "Not yet, but it's a start." 5 years later, a cabin stood on the edge of the hidden valley, larger than Jack's original home, built with care and purpose. Smoke curled from the chimney, rising into the clear autumn air. Nearby, a garden of medicinal herbs flourished, tended by knowledgeable hands. Jack Blackwood stood on the porch, watching 7-year-old Lucy practice with a small bow. Her aim was improving daily, her movements displaying the natural grace of her Comanche heritage. Catherine emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sam Cooper's here," she said. "Says he needs to talk to you." Jack nodded, turning as his old friend rode into the clearing. Cooper's expression was grave as he dismounted. "What is it, Sam?" Jack asked, recognizing the look of a man bearing bad news. "Edward Holloway escaped during transfer to the territorial prison," Cooper said without preamble. "Killed 2 guards. Word is, he's headed this way." Jack's face hardened momentarily, then relaxed into a grim smile. "Let him come." Catherine touched his arm. "Jack, we knew this day might come," he said quietly. "We're ready for it." That evening, as Lucy slept and Catherine prepared for bed, Jack stepped outside onto the porch. The Winchester rifle, his constant companion for so many years, rested comfortably in his hands as he scanned the tree line. Catherine joined him, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the night chill. "Do you think he'll really come?" "A man like Edward Holloway doesn't forget, or forgive." Jack checked the rifle's action, the familiar sound reassuring in the quiet night. "But neither do I." She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They had built something here, not just a home, but a life, a future, something worth protecting. "This time," Jack said softly, "we're ready for him." The mountains stood silent around them, ancient and watchful. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Perhaps the same gray alpha Jack had tracked that fateful day 5 years ago. The sound carried across the valley, a reminder that some hunts never truly ended. But tonight, Jack Blackwood stood guard over what he had found, not what he had lost. And this time, he would not fail. The hunter had become a protector. And in the end, that made all the difference. And that, my friends, is just the beginning of the legend of Jack Blackwood, the hunter of Montana Territory. For more tales of survival, justice, and the untamed frontier, subscribe to Wild West Chronicles. Next week, The Marshal's Last Stand, the story of how Isaiah Parker faced down the infamous Blackwater Gang with nothing but a broken arm and an unloaded revolver.